Good morning friends, myself Dr. Ellen Ghatge, Head Department of Business Economics. Today we are going to continue the topic which we have started, that is demand forecasting. And some of information has been given by Professor V.D. Patil regarding the demand forecasting. But at the earlier I have given some information regarding the meaning of demand forecasting. Demand forecasting is a expectation of future demand, and we have also considered the types of demand forecasting, nature of demand forecasting, in which I have given information to you regarding positive demand forecasting and negative demand forecasting. And while considering demand forecasting is necessary for business development. Each and every businessman has to adopt the concept of demand forecasting for his development, for his business development. And in this connection we have started one content, that is demand forecast, the steps involves in demand forecasting, how the process of demand forecasting runs in a business level. I have given some information regarding this. Again I repeat the points related to steps involved in demand forecasting. First of all, we have to consider setting of objectives. Before starting the concept of demand forecasting, we have to set the objective. Which are our objectives? For what purpose we are making demand forecasting? That's why we may have to determine the goals at first, objectives at first. And when we become successful for setting the objectives, why we are making demand forecasting? Demand forecasting is necessary for business development. And which are your goals? Goals related to business. Then selection of goals. Out of all the objectives, we may have to determine the specific goal. Objectives and goals are different. Objectives are related to develop the business in future, and goals in which the process should be started for achieving the objectives, isn't it? Goal is a broader concept, objective is smaller concept. After selection of goals, identification of demand determinants. While determining the demand forecasting of XYZ product, we have to identify the demand determinants, how demand should be determined. What are the determinants which denotes the demand? For example, income is most important determinant of demand forecasting or demand. For demand determination, we may have to consider the income, demand for the product, nature of product, duration of product, market situation, fluctuations in the market, government policy. These are the points which denotes the determinants of demand, and we may have to identify how we can determine the demand forecasting of XYZ product in which a businessman has to run the business in future. Next one point we may have to consider here, that is interpretation of data. Interpretation of data is most important. Whichever business we want to run, we must have some data. Data means which type of business we want to run, why we run that particular business, and in that business how much capital we want, how much labor we want, how much amount we spend on the building, how much amount we spend on the labor, how much amount we have to spend on the electricity charges and other charges. Such a type of data is necessary for developing the business, and that's why these steps should be undertaken by the businessman while guessing the demand forecasting, while expecting the demand for future demand for the product. We may have to determine these steps. Within these steps we may have to calculate, we may have to guess the demand forecasting. In short, we can say demand forecasting is the forecasting of expected demand, future demand of the product. Demand forecasting is positive and negative. In positive demand forecasting, businessman can get so many benefits. In negative demand forecasting, businessman has to face several challenges, and those challenges he has to minimize, and how he becomes successful in minimizing the challenges is a part of demand forecasting. Do you understood? And later on, we may have to consider the demand forecasting is necessary for overall development of a business, and while determining the development of a business, we may have to adopt the concept of demand forecasting. The concept of demand forecasting is most important for the development of business, not only for the particular businessman, but the concept of demand forecasting is useful for the state, useful for industry, useful for country, useful for international level, the variety of nations, isn't it? And that's why, while considering the importance of demand forecasting in decision making process, a businessman has to take several decisions while developing the business, while doing the business. He has to take several decisions, and while taking the decisions, he has to use the concept of demand forecasting. Without demand forecasting, he does not take the decisions regarding the business development. Decision making process of a businessman is depend upon the demand forecasting, isn't it? Now we are going to discuss how the variety of decisions have to be taken by the businessman, and each and every decision is based on the demand forecasting. First point, production planning. For any businessman has to consider the planning related to production. He has to determine the planning regarding the production, how much production we want to produce and why we want to produce such a type of production. While determining the level of production, he has to take several decisions. Suppose X businessman has to produce 100 products, and while taking the decisions of production of 100 units, he has to take several decisions, and those decisions are based on the demand forecasting. Why 100? Why not 200? Why not 50? Isn't it? Total level of production or planning related to production, decisions related to production planning, how much production we want to produce, as well as which type of decision we want to take regarding the production, level of production, production planning, and that production of planning is based on the demand forecasting. For example, in rainy season, the demand for umbrella is increasing, and that's why in rainy season the demand for umbrella is increasing within 1 month for 400. Suppose 400 umbrellas are sold in the market, and producer has to prepare the plan that minimum 500 umbrellas should be produced, and that's why the decisions related to production of 500 umbrellas are based on the demand forecasting. Businessman assumes that in future demand for umbrella is increasing 400 per month, and 100 extra production we produce, and that is necessary for business development. And in this connection, production planning, whichever decision has to be taken by the businessman, he has to adopt the concept of demand forecasting. We understood. Next one, supply chain efficiency. Supply chains means after doing the production of XYZ product, how we supply this product to last man, that is consumers, from the producer to consumer, and whichever chain he has to consider is a part of demand forecasting. Producer or a firm produces the production, then that production transfers to sub-dealers, then sub-dealers, then shopkeeper, and then consumers. Suppose there are 3-4 middlemen in which the selling and production process of a commodity is made, and for that purpose supply chain efficiency, that efficiency should be continued, and that efficiency is based on the demand forecasting. decisions related to demand forecasting. As the demand is increasing 200% and production is 100%, we cannot fulfill the chain. We cannot continue the efficiency, and that's why supply chain efficiency is necessary for taking the decisions of demand. Taking the decisions of demand of the product which consumer demands, isn't it? इथं काही बाब तुम्हाला लक्षात घेणं गरजेचं आहे की कोणत्या वस्तूच्या उत्पादनाच्या प्रक्रियेमध्ये उत्पादन किती करायचं हे मागणी किती आहे त्याच्यावर अवलंबून आहे. म्हणजे उत्पादन विषयक निर्णय घेत असताना, उत्पादनाचं नियोजन करीत असताना मागणीशी रिलेटेड घटक विचारात घेतल्याशिवाय उत्पादनाचं नियोजन करता येत नाही. म्हणजे मागणीचं फोरकास्टिंग आपण ज्याला भाकीत म्हणतो, अनुमान म्हणतो, फ्युचर मागणीचं अनुमान जे आहे ते अनुमान विचारात घेत असताना त्याच्याही अगोदर प्रोडक्शनचे निर्णय घेताना मागणीचं अनुमान विचारात घ्यावं लागतं. प्रोडक्शनचं प्लॅनिंग करत असताना मागणीचं अनुमान घ्यावं लागतं. आता आपल्याकडे करंट इश्यू आहे पहा, कांद्याच्या किमती, कांद्याची मागणी, कांद्याचा पुरवठा. करंट आहे, कांद्याची मागणी आणि कांद्याचा पुरवठा याच्यामध्ये मेळ जर बसला नाही तर कांद्याच्या किमती वाढतात. कांद्याच्या किमती वाढल्यानंतर फ्युचरमध्ये किती वाढते? जे गेल्या महिन्यात कांद्याच्या किमती 20 रुपये होत्या, आत्ता ह्या किमती 80 रुपयावर आलेल्या आहेत. लक्षात येते? त्यामुळं इथं प्रोडक्शन जे आहे ते प्रोडक्शन केलेलं आहे आपण, पण प्रोडक्शनमध्ये प्रॉब्लेम निर्माण झाले. कांदा नासधूस झाली कांद्याची, अवकाळी पावसानं कांद्याचं पिकाचं नुकसान झालं, त्याचाही परिणाम प्रोडक्शनवर झाला आणि प्रोडक्शनवर त्याचा परिणाम झाला. पण मागणी कॉन्स्टंट आहे. उलट मागणी आता येत्या काही काळामध्ये मागणी वाढणार आहे, पण प्रोडक्शन कमी आहे. आणि मग त्यामध्ये ही इम्पोर्ट एक्सपोर्ट पॉलिसी जी होती, दिस डिमांड फोरकास्टिंग टॉपिक इज मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टंट इन रियालिटी ऑल्सो. आपण प्रत्यक्षामध्ये मार्केटमध्ये जे काय चालतं हे केवळ थेरॉटिकल आपण बघायचं नाही, प्रॅक्टिकली सुद्धा हाऊ डिमांड फोरकास्टिंग इज नेसेसरी. आता हीच बाब भाजीपाल्याच्या उत्पादनाच्या बाबतीमध्ये, हीच बाब अन्नधान्याच्या उत्पादनामध्ये होते पहा. म्हणजे प्रोडक्शन प्लॅनिंग जर करायचं असेल तर आपल्याला डिमांड फोरकास्टिंग म्हणजे मागणीचं अनुमान काय ते विचारात घ्यावं लागतं. आणि त्याचबरोबर मागणीप्रमाणे पुरवठा जर करायचा असेल तर पुरवठ्यामधली साखळी जी आहे त्या साखळीची कार्यक्षमता टिकवावी लागते. जे मागणी 50 नगांची आहे, पुरवठा 40 नगांचा केला, किमती वाढत जाणार. जशा कांद्याच्या किमती सध्या वाढलेल्या आहेत पहा. म्हणजे ॲज पर सप्लाय, ॲज पर डिमांड सप्लाय शुड बी गिवन टू दी मार्केट. म्हणजे बाजारपेठेत मागणीप्रमाणे जर पुरवठा केला तर किमती वाढत नाहीत. आणि मग या सप्लाय जो आहे तो सप्लाय करण्यासाठी आपल्याला सप्लाय चेन जी आहे, म्हणजे उत्पादक उत्पादन करतो, नंतर तो डीलरकडे येतं, डीलरकडून सब डीलरकडे येतं, सब डीलरकडून शॉपकीपरकडे येतं, शॉपकीपरकडून ग्राहकाला मिळतं. आता हे जे मिडलमन आहेत, ह्या मिडलमनपर्यंत प्रोडक्शन आणि डिमांड याच्यामधल्या मिडलमनची जी साखळी आहे, जी ज्याला आपण चेन म्हणतो, ही चेन केवळ वस्तूच्या विक्रीची नाही तर वस्तू उत्पादकापासून ग्राहकापर्यंत पोहोचवण्याची ती प्रक्रिया आहे. आणि सोसायटीज ओव्हरऑल सॅटिस्फॅक्शन इज डिपेंड अपॉन. जर मागणीप्रमाणे उत्पादन झालं नाही किंवा मागणीप्रमाणे वस्तू मिळाल्या नाहीत, सप्लाय झाला नाही, तर मार्केटमध्ये काय होत असतं, फ्लक्च्युएशन्स होत असतं. मग कांद्याच्या किमती वाढत्यात, कमी होतात पहा एकदम. फार मोठ्या प्रमाणात उत्पादन वाढलं, किमती कमी झालेल्या असतात, लक्षात घ्या. त्याचप्रमाणे सप्लाय चेन जी आहे, सप्लायसुद्धा व्यवस्थित जर झाला नाही तर मात्र, म्हणजे उदाहरणार्थ मुंबईमध्ये खाडीमध्ये तयार होणारे मासे जे आहेत ते इकडे वेस्टर्न महाराष्ट्रामध्ये आपल्याला आणायचे आहेत, पश्चिम महाराष्ट्रामध्ये. तो जर सप्लाय झाला नाही, सप्लाय कमी झाला तर किमती वाढतात. त्यामुळे सप्लाय चेन हे आहे ती कंटिन्युअसली, मग 4 क्रेट असतील, 5 क्रेट असतील, काय असेल, किंवा वेस्टर्न महाराष्ट्रामधून मिल्क आपण पाठवतो, दूध मुंबईला पाठवतो. दुधाचे 2 टँकर कमी झाले की तिकडे दुधाची टंचाई निर्माण होते पहा. आणि मग दुधाची टंचाई निर्माण झाली की ही सप्लाय चेनमध्ये इनइफिशियन्सी निर्माण होते. ही प्रॅक्टिकल एक्झाम्पल सुद्धा आपल्याला डिमांड फोरकास्टिंगमध्ये माहिती असणं गरजेचं आहे. या अनुषंगाने आपल्याला डिमांड फोरकास्टिंग ही कन्सेप्ट जी आहे ती कन्सेप्ट विचारात घ्यावी लागते. म्हणजे विच एव्हर डिसिजन हॅज टू बी टेकन बाय दी बिझनेसमन आर बेस्ड ऑन दी कन्सेप्ट ऑफ डिमांड फोरकास्टिंग. In another words, we can say demand forecasting is most important for decision making process which has to be taken by the businessman. Total development of business is based on the concept used by the businessman of the demand forecasting. Then third one point we may have to consider today, that is sales forecasting. Total profit of a businessman is based on the total sale. Total sale is based on the total supply, total demand, total production. And while taking the decisions regarding the sales forecasting, it means when we make the decisions, when we take the decisions regarding the sales forecasting, how sales should be enhanced, that is depend upon the demand for the existing product in future, whichever expectation has to be determined by the businessman, and the decisions regarding the sales forecasting are based on the demand forecasting. Without demand forecasting, we do not make this sales forecasting, and without sales forecasting, we do not enhance the profit, and without enhancing profit, we do not survive the business in the business world today. And that's why for taking the decisions of sales forecasting, the demand forecasting consideration is most important. म्हणजे जास्तीत जास्त प्रमाणात विक्रीचं भाकीत करण्यासाठी आपल्याला निर्णय घेत असताना डिमांड फोरकास्टिंगचा किंवा मागणीच्या अनुमानाचा विचार करावा लागतो. जास्तीत जास्त विक्री भविष्यकाळात करायची असेल तर आपल्याला त्या अनुषंगानं भविष्यकाळातल्या मागणीचा विचार करावा लागतो, कारण विक्री ही मागणीवर अवलंबून असते आणि ती मागणी अनेक घटकावर अवलंबून असते. एकूण अर्थव्यवस्थेच्या सिच्युएशनचा अभ्यास करत असताना प्रामुख्यानं सेल्स फोरकास्टिंग हे डिमांड फोरकास्टिंगवर अवलंबून आहे. and there are so many determinants just we have considered: income as well as liking of the consumers, supply of the commodities. These factors are most important in determination of demand forecasting, and decisions related to sales forecasting are most important for demand determination, and demand determination is most important for demand forecasting, and demand forecasting is most important for the development of business. The remaining points we will consider later on.